Hello, everyone. We'll begin in just a moment here. Welcome to the Office 365 training webinar. Today, our focus is on SharePoint. Alrighty, let us begin. I'm going to mute everybody. Welcome, everybody. My name is Cam Starlotti, manager here at SMB Help Desk. A little bit of my information. Here for 3 years, got my MCSA, working on my MCSE. Here's my LinkedIn if you'd like to add me. And we'll just get through this. You've all seen this before, so let's just start rocking and rolling today. Focus is SharePoint, specifically Microsoft Office 365, SharePoint Online. Have any questions? Feel free to email webinar@smbhd.com. Jumping right in, I do want to set the stage that this will be a little bit more technical than previous webinars, for the sheer fact of giving you guys the full understanding of what goes into some of the building of it, the roles, responsibilities, access, just to give you an idea of how powerful this tool is on top of what goes into the IT team's development along with user feedback. So some of this stuff that we'll be reviewing doesn't really pertain to your job and or duties, but I felt that it was important for you guys to understand some of the back-end configurations to have an understanding of how SharePoint Online works, where the strikes, where are some things that you need to focus on, how to use it properly. But mostly we're going to just have a general overview. We'll talk about some usage, revision history. This is comparable to OneDrive. We can sort of say that OneDrive is a little kid's bike with training wheels. SharePoint is a monster truck. So obviously there's a lot more features, security, control, sharing, and some more of these pros that we'll get into. So start off some of the pros of SharePoint, SharePoint Online. The Central Repository. SharePoint offers a single convenient record management system for storing and sharing company files. So instead of having multiple file servers or having USB drives, storing it on a single server here, a map drive there, in this regard, it is a one-stop shop where all different departments from marketing to sales to accounting to R&D, everyone has a place within SharePoint Online. It's all about how it's built out, how the permissions are set. Collaboration, not just for internal teams, but you have the ability to share with other departments, with other companies within your own company, even with external users, for partners, for customers, for potential customers. You have all of these options with SharePoint Online. SharePoint was designed specifically as a team collaboration software. It offers tools like Docs, Excel, Task, Calendars, and workflows, as well as Outlook integration capabilities to improve communication and help keep employees connected. Flexibility. SharePoint provides countless options for integration and customization. It's one of those things where it's a platform. You can use it very basically as your generic file server, just to dump your files in, be able to have it in a centralized cloud backup location, but you can build it all the way out to an intranet for your clients internally. There's workflows, there's Power BI. In grand scheme of things, it's sort of endless. It's like building a website. You can have your old, if anybody's ever dealt with a GeoCity, you can have a very basic GeoCity page, Now there's Weebly, things of that nature, but you can get all the way into WordPress, customizing your own HTML, Java. Again, I'm probably talking on a high technical level, but to give you an idea, it is incredibly scalable. Versatility, so many different features, works well with other CRMs, ERPs. Again, the flexibility to be able to make it what you need it to be. Scalability is a big part of this, in the sheer fact that you can add to it and have it grow with your company, scaling as you grow and utilize it more and more. It's one of those things where when people start getting into it, understanding it and utilizing it, they increase their usage just for the sheer fact that they start seeing the collaboration abilities, utilizing it as a repository. You know, when you implement Microsoft Flow, where you say, hey, I'm going to get this document. Every time I get a document with the tag engineering, emails everybody in the engineering team a link to that document, and then they can add their notes to it. It's just one of the small feature sets to it. Power BI, an incredible tool. If anybody's used this before, I've seen this at a couple different conferences where you leverage multiple different Office 365 systems, where you input your information into a spreadsheet, you do some metadata tagging, if you will, or giving that document details. You can really leverage your information, if formed properly and organized correctly, to do really incredible things. I don't want to get too far off into that tangent, but leveraging Excel, Power BI, and SharePoint Online gives people the ability to request information from their computer with voice commands. I've seen this in person where you can be in a meeting, you can say, hi Cortana, when was the last time Dave had over $10,000 in sales in August? 25 seconds later, you'll get, he did this back in 2016 with $12,000 in sales in August. You can get that kind of granular information if you build this platform correctly, where it's faster to say it and ask your computer Cortana than to actually type in or search for that information and parse it together. There's incredible intelligence to it. Again, that's a few steps past this webinar, but I just wanted to give you guys a taste of what you can do when you start leveraging these Office 365 products, putting them together, and also just organizing that information. Integration, again, with the Office 365 suite, there are so many different options to have this work with other systems, CRMs, ERPs, having that as a central repository for these different systems. Reputation, SharePoint is a billion-dollar product in the Microsoft lineup. Extremely well adopted both globally and locally, with plenty of vendors in this space to support you. I've been to SharePoint Fest locally here in the Chicagoland, where there is an entire industry based off of supporting add-ons and additional feature sets to SharePoint Online, which is fairly incredible. And again, integrated reports, generating documents that can be integrated with Power BI. It's just an incredibly powerful tool. So some things to think about when it comes to using SharePoint Online, building the architecture, structuring it, and granting permissions along with sharing. The setup will take time. It will take expertise. As with anything that is worth something in the long run, you have to invest time, money, effort, research. And it's one of those things where you put it in the front load of a project, you're able to recoup that later as it pays dividends. Doing your research, understanding how your users are going to use it. How is your department going to use it? How are you going to use SharePoint? Once you start understanding these things, you're able to use it more and more as an integral part of your daily operation. So there is setup that needs to be considered. We've been working again with deploying this, and a big part of this is looking at how you're currently using your files, folders, sharing, and considering all that to build out this new system. Training, very important that not just the IT team that's administrating this, building it out, updating it, configuring it, doing upgrades to the system understands it, but the user base. The users really need to know the proper steps to doing this, as in putting the files in the right place, using revision history, using the right tools as in Office 365, Excel, web-based, or a local application to properly utilize this. Once there's structure, training, documentation in place, SharePoint really can take off. But without those steps, not just in the building and architecture of it, but actually the users adopting these processes and being stringent on their own side of using it the way that it's supposed to be. Rollout time, it does take a long time to adopt and properly roll out across a company. It's not something that you just flip a switch. You don't build it in a week and then just let it loose on your users, for the sheer fact that it can easily turn into mess, not just permissions, lost files, revision history, a lot of extra sharing. These things need to be planned, scheduled, and really the thought has to be put into place of not just what IT believes is the optimal setup for security and redundancy, but also how the users are going to use it, how they want to use it, and what are they coming from. Most of the time we're coming from people with just an old server in the back, and they got a map drive, and they use file shares, and they dump it into marketing, sales, accounting, and they hope it's there later. Hopefully there's a backup involved. There is a reliance on browsers with SharePoint Online, a cloud-based solution. You will be needing to use Internet Explorer at some point in your access of SharePoint Online, as in if you're utilizing a web browser session to your SharePoint Online, as we went into with OneDrive, where you can look at your library in this format of SharePoint Online. It's called Document Libraries. In your OneDrive, you're looking at your own local folders. So you will have some need to use Internet Explorer with this. A lot of people are fans of Chrome and Firefox. Some people like Edge. It is optimal and recommended to use Internet Explorer at some point with your interaction with SharePoint. Even if you're going to use the local File Explorer map drive session, as it looks like, just like as a local file on your workstation, at some point in that interaction or that login session, you will have to connect to office.com and that SharePoint site. Things that we automate on our side, where you log into Windows when you come in with your coffee in the morning, you log into Windows with your username and password. We automate that process for most of our clients, where they log in, a script runs, it opens up Internet Explorer, logs you into office.com, gets you to the SharePoint site, so you can use SharePoint Online via a web browser and Internet Explorer, or through a map drive using File Explorer, which is a local application on your workstation. It is something that can be used in many different environments. It is scalable, but you have to be able to invest, not just in the architecture, but into the training. Now, these limitations might not look daunting by any means, with 30 million items, 2,000 files per site collection, 15 gig file size. Optimally, you want to have less than 100,000 files in a single OneDrive or team site library. That's what we call a document library. It's somewhat of a container or a folder in this environment. And for optimal searching, revision history, and just general speed of accessing files, searching for files, there are limitations. So you do want to not hit that threshold, sort of like your hard drive on your laptop. You have a terabyte hard drive on your laptop. I believe I've touched on this before. You don't want to use 900 gigs. Optimally, you don't really want to go over 600 gigs. You want to always leave some space for the data to grow and expand, shrink, and that's the same thing with SharePoint Online, where you don't want to build it out all the way, everything to the tip top of its abilities. It's always nice to leave yourself some wiggle room so that performance, redundancy, general optimization of this product is in place. Now, version history and revisions is an incredible part of SharePoint, something we'll touch on and demo out at the end of this webinar, but something that I use, we've touched on before with OneDrive, which is built into there, but in SharePoint it's even more, where we have 50,000 major versions and 511 minor versions, which again, this increases often from Microsoft and Office 365. What this means is, again, we don't need version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600, 10,000 of a proposal. You have one copy of it. Everybody's working on the latest and greatest. You have to revert. I'll show you how to do that, where you just go into your revision history, pull back this file. So to remove confusion, to remove loss of files, to remove loss of work, utilizing revision history and version history is really, really important and a powerful tool. SharePoint groups, I don't believe that we've had a client that would ever come to anywhere close to this cap, but 5,000 users and 5,000 groups for a specific site is a high threshold. Again, with 2 million users for a site collection, this is built for mom and pop, 1, 2, 3 users. Some companies, 100, 200 users, scaling up to millions of users. So we've talked on OneDrive. We've had a whole webinar about it, the abilities, how to set it up, how to use it, both locally through the application, also through a web browser. OneDrive is for one. I'm going to use this for files that I'm working on as pre-production documentation, working on a new on-hire or a new user process. I'm going to build that out locally so I know it's backed up, I know it's accessible, I know that it's secure, I know it's recoverable. I also have my revision history. When I get to the point where it's ready to share with my team members, with management, with my user base, with my clients, that's when it's ready for SharePoint. You control the files, it's lightweight, easy to use. You can use it in a browser, a local folder, or an application. General control of that software, of those files, is on you. It's not meant as a easily shared platform. There are those abilities, not always recommended, and that is OneDrive. SharePoint, the file belongs to the group, the team members, the company, the department. When you put something in SharePoint, that is meant for collaboration. Or you can publish something and say, hey, this is your HR doc, come here, it's read-only, go ahead, print it out, fill it in, and give it over to HR. You have permission controls that are centralized by the IT team or whoever's managing your SharePoint infrastructure, where you have greater controls over different document libraries, different groups, different folders, things of that nature. SharePoint, again, collaboration with others. OneDrive for one, SharePoint is for sharing. Using web browser, you can use the map drive just as local folders. You have restrictions when you upload files and folders. You get inherited permissions to files and folders depending on what was set at that global top level. We'll get into that a little bit more later. And then you can, on top of that, brand your SharePoint site. You can make a SharePoint site look like your company website. You can use Java, you can use HTML. You can make this a full-blown website where clients, prospective clients, can come in there, go to your SharePoint page, see what they need to know about your company, and then you can have your own team members, users, employees, click the login page and log into your SharePoint site from anywhere in the world if you wanted to. Again, SharePoint Online can be a blank slate where you can really build whatever you like. If you want to make it a store, You want to make it a website, you want to make it a video repository, you want to make it a training site, you have all these options. So what is a SharePoint team site? SharePoint team site connects you and your team to content, information, and apps that you rely on every day. For example, you can use a team site to store and collaborate on files or to create and manage lists of information. On a team site homepage, you can view links to important team files, apps, web pages, and see recent activity in your activity feed. That's one tool that I use a fair amount, as you can see here on this slide, that you are able to see what's recent activity, which is really exciting to be able to see not just what you are working on, but what your team members and the other people in your company are working on. Obviously, if you have permissions to those files, folders, document libraries. I've used this for myself where, hey, I forgot where I saved this file. I know I worked on it yesterday. You can come into here, look at your recent activity. Oh, why did I save that there? Okay, let me put it in the right place. This is a nice jump point for that. You can access your team site from SharePoint homepage, from the file section of your Office 365 groups, or on the go with the SharePoint mobile app. SharePoint mobile app is great. Just like the OneDrive app, you have access to your files. You do very basic manipulation, but on the go, the SharePoint app is only getting better. Definitely something I would recommend once we get this off the ground and pushed into production, where you're on the go, you're on your iPad, you're on your Android phone, you want to access files, but you're in line at the airport, you can see, look, and sometimes you can even use PDF signature tools to sign documents, update documents. It's fairly limitless with what you can do with SharePoint Online, again, with the investment to the configuration of the back end. So let's take a little look around at the site header. At the top of your team site, you see your site logo, the name of the site, and whether the site is private or public. And only approved members can view it. And if it's public, anyone in the organization can view that. If you have permission to edit the site, there's also a link at the top of the team site to add a new list, document library, page, posts, web app. Again, limitless. A lot of companies use calendars in this, where they can sync it up to their Outlook calendar to see who's off, when, and where they're going, what they're doing. We use this internally in my team, where we have people going on customer sites. I need everybody to have one place to look at to see who's doing what and when and where. It's a really cool tool in that. And giving permission, setting up custom forms, really easy to do. And again, centralized location to collaborate and to understand different people's duties, roles, and what they're currently working on. So on the left-hand navigation pane, you have a couple different options. At the top of the navigation pane, you'll see a search box. Now, this is an incredibly powerful tool. I was using this as I was prepping for this demo, where I was trying to track down some files or look at what was recently changed. Again, if built right and used right by the user base, the search can be very well, not just optimized, but utilized, for the sheer fact that if you keep your files within the right amount of your document libraries, again, not overloading any one portion of your SharePoint site, search box will find every single thing for you. To give you another level of technical, SharePoint Online, SharePoint is a SQL backend. There are limitations to the file names, the file size, and also how many files within different databases, if you will. Again, they are document libraries is what most people use for this. Again, the search tool, even more so than when you use a file explorer, which we'll get into in a little bit, for accessing your SharePoint site, the web browser search function is incredible. So the homepage. Team site homepage contains various default web parts. You can have news, you can add and create articles, stats, updates to company news or new changes, and then you're able to publish it just like a website. You can also use this as a repository for news articles, being able to look at one article, let's say the latest and greatest chew toy, and then you click on that said new article on a chew toy from July 1st. And once you're done reading with that, you can be linked to whatever else is in that folder or repository. So it's a really good way of, having a jump point to new information and also access to old information. Quick links section, you can add a link to files or web pages to the top of the page. Just clicking add, you can enter the URL, select the item, and that will give you the options for recent pages and files. Home page can also contain activity feed. Again, so you can take a look, see what's new in the company, see new files, new processes, new documents, new products. Pretty much that's up to you, but you can have this as a view into what's going on with your company. Everybody with adoption and the proper setup can come in here and see what's new and great with the company at one view, instead of going to email, going to Chatter, going to Teams, going to Skype, going to the web page, going to the newsletter. You can have all this in one site. Also, again, sharing the files and displaying links to those files is another way that you can use this activity page and one of the main SharePoint pages of the company. And you can also do this on the department level. Now, permissions. Again, this is going to be a little more technical than normal, but again, I want to give you guys an overview of how permissions are set up, and just to give you an idea, so when you're asking for access to certain things, you know how to ask for it properly. So if you work on a site, working inside a site collection, every site exists in a site collection, which is a group of sites under a single top-level site, just like it is in a forest. There's a general hierarchy to there. As you can see, you have your site collection, top-level sub-sites, then you have our lists, and then you have your list items. Inheritance. Now, this is a very important part of SharePoint Online, also with the SharePoint On-Prem, where if you build it correctly and you give the right permission sets at that top level to these different document libraries, that will cascade down to subfolders and those subsites we were talking about. A site collection administrator configures permissions to the top level site or root site for the whole collection. Lists and libraries inherit permissions from the site to which they belong. It is important to know that a user can't interrupt the default permission inheritance. Now, you'd have to have control to break inheritance, which would say, hey, Team 1 has access to everything, the executive team. Team 2 is middle management, where they have access to modify documents, but they can't delete things out. Then you have Group C, which is end users, it's read-only. They get the documents, they print them out, they fill them out, and then they upload those into the proper client documentation folders, etc. People with access can break that level of inheritance and say, hey, Group C for this folder can have full rights to it to be able to delete, modify, all of those things. Now, this comes down to the building of the architecture. Again, I don't want to get overly technical, but I want to give you guys an idea of how permission sets work when you're requesting or understanding permission sets in SharePoint Online. So permission levels, full control. You have everything available to you. This is the owner's group, and this cannot be really customized or deleted. Design group. They create lists, document libraries, edit pages. They can do a fair amount of customizing of that. This is for, again, management, people that have an understanding of SharePoint Online. They take ownership, maybe department heads. Then we have edit, so you're able to update and edit lists, delete them. Again, full control, you can build the site, you build the containers, you can build everything underneath that. Design, you can modify the design of specific document libraries and lists. And then you have edit, where you can change it around on more of a smaller level, less control. Contribute, again, view, add, update, and delete list items and documents. And then read is just where you're able to see them, download documents, but not make any major modifications. Limited access, again, this will be available after. I don't need to read everything off to you, but I wanted to give you an idea of just the different levels of permissions within SharePoint Online. So permission levels work together with SharePoint groups. SharePoint group is a set of users who have all the same permission level, just like an Active Directory or other different security protocols, if you will. You group people together based off their level of access. Usually it's IT admins, owners, then you have executives, then you have management, and then you have users. Now this depends on different companies, the hierarchy, how large the company is, and different level of control that you want to give to people. So this works that you put related permissions together into a permission level. Then you assign that permission level to that group. So again, you can say that you have, your designers, your contributors, things of that nature. There are custom groups that you can build, but also there is a fair amount of default groups that you can utilize, and in many instances can be what you take to production. Again, I know that this is mostly user base of end users, so again, I'm not going to go too far into some of this, but I wanted to make this available to everyone so they can see what goes into the back end and the permission sets that go into it. Again, you have visitors, members, owners. Again, so a more general view of access. When you share documents outside of the company, you'd be wanting to use that visitors option where they can just see it, they can view it, they can do minor modifications there. Again, the permission sets is, I'm not going to say bare by any means in SharePoint Online, but something that you need to be aware of and also cognitive of what you're sharing and how based off the access that you're given. So here we have just a general overview of administering it, where you go to library, to library settings, or list settings, and then you're able to set permission sets. Creating a SharePoint group, again, able to create a group where everyone has the same permission set. Again, you can have it by department, you could have it by level of access. There are so many different options there, but I'm not going to get too far into this because it's not something that everybody is going to have access to. But again, I want people to understand that you can request access for things on certain sites. Hey, you go to this site where accounting told you, hey, I need you to fill out this form. You go there, it says you're not allowed here. There is an option for membership requests where the appropriate group owner is able to then authorize or decline or modify your request based off what you need to do your job in this collaborative forum. Adding users to a group, if you have access, clicking share, you're able to share this document internally, externally, and say, hey, I want this person just to be able to read this. I just want this person to be able to make edits to this. Or you can say, hey, I want this person to have full access to this document so they can reshare it. And all you need is an email address, which is really cool. If it's internal to Office 365, it has intelligence to know, hey, this person's part of this group. Go ahead and give it to them. Oh, they don't have this group. You're sort of breaking inheritance. You have access to do that. You have the ability to do that. Again, this is an option and a tool to silo information and also use it as a collaborative tool with checks and balances to make sure the right people have the right access. Removing users, again, getting into the site settings, user permissions, people and groups, fairly straightforward when you've been there a couple of times. Not something a lot of you are going to do, but something that you can do if someone's changing roles within a company. Adding a page, there are very many options for adding new options, a document library, list, page, applications, customizing, as well as adding different feature sets to this. Again, you have the abilities as such a web page where you can add hyperlinks, code if you like, as in Java, HTML. Just making a simple document library, again, which is basically a folder, specific page which has information, pictures, and you can even publish applications where they can click into a Word document, into a PDF, things of that nature. So the first time you publish your page, you'll be prompted to help others find this page. You can do this later, but you have options to add different information, your email address, different links. There's different ways. This isn't so much metadata as in details of a file. So we talked about this a little bit in the OneDrive portion, where we say we can have a picture there, and you can tag it with a custom form saying, where's the location? Who was in this picture? It's almost like Facebook tagging to some extent, where you can tag your information with information detailing what it is. So in the grand scheme of things, you take 100 pictures, you put in the hour to label all these pictures. Let's say you're building a new website or you have a new product. For you to be able to optimize your search and use of these files, you can build custom forms that says, okay, well, this is going to be SKU number 2875. This is a detail of this. And you can have all these little sub-levels to a specific file. It could be a picture, it could be a spreadsheet, it could be a form. And then you're able to have other people search for that, fill that information out for access later and utilization of that file. Editing your page, you're making your changes, hit save and close, and then you're able to publish that if you have that access, again, similar to a web page. Having access, you're able to delete pages along with modifying them. Now, you can copy items from a document library specifically with your access. So you select the items that you want to copy, and then you click Copy To, which is a very cool tool. So let's say you were already in a SharePoint Online environment, but it was haphazard, where it wasn't really built right or utilized right, and or both, which happens very often if, again, you don't put the investment in at the beginning. So you can say, hey, I want to take this file from new products and I want to put this into old products or production products or sale products. You can move whole folders, whole document libraries, or individual files from one place to another within SharePoint Online with a few clicks, which is really, really nice. You can even move it from your OneDrive or to your OneDrive, again, being the same interface and backend as SharePoint. You do have that ability to go from, as I said before, you take your OneDrive files, pre-production, you're ready for production, you can click on your files and kick it up to SharePoint. Or there's something that was in production, it wasn't 100% ready, you can move it back to your OneDrive to finalize it before you bring it back into the collaborative environment. Creating new folders, copying the files, fairly straightforward, all with a GUI interface in a web browser session. Moving files from one place to another, again, the move to option is very powerful. You have the ellipse, which is the 3 dots. Sometimes it's horizontal, sometimes it's vertical. That is an easy way of getting additional information, something we'll go to and review later in the demo. So you're able to select what folder you want to pull and where do you want to push it to, and you can create a new folder if you don't want to put it into a pre-existing document library. So mapping a SharePoint site. This is something that comes up time and time again, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. You have your access to your SharePoint site, just as in your OneDrive, through local instance on your workstation through File Explorer, and you also have a web browser session. Now, for general operation with your files within SharePoint Online, it is faster and more efficient to use a map drive. So as you guys currently have a file server where you access it through going to My Computer or Computer, you see a drive letter, S or F, and you access your files that way. this is the same way. At the bottom of this slide, you can see the setup of a mapping of a network drive. This is recommended for normal use of SharePoint Online if you're using it as a document library. Again, the sky's the limit with SharePoint Online. Most people use it as a file repository to leverage the free storage, backup, security, sharing, and redundancy of their files. So it is a tool that is used, but again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So these are the general steps for using a map drive. When it comes to using a map drive, if you have an issue with your map drive, you log into your workstation, you see a red X on it, that doesn't mean that it's broken. So we always map our drives as the S drive for SharePoint. Still give it a double click and see if that doesn't work, then I would recommend opening up Internet Explorer. Log into office.com, again, depending on what you guys would like from us, we automate that process when you log into Windows for the first time. It opens up Internet Explorer, it logs you into office.com, it takes you to SharePoint, which is then that handshake to authorize you to your map drive. Let me touch base on this again. So for you to use SharePoint Online through a map drive, as you see at the bottom of the screen where you have a drive letter attached to it, at some point in that Windows session, you need to connect to Office Online or office.com through an Internet Explorer session. That is your authorization, that is your handshake, that is your key, if you will, to access the map drive. You have to authenticate yourself to access this. They need to know who you are. Are you a new hire who can just see some of the HR documents to fill out, or are you an executive that needs to see everything? This is where that comes into place. Common issue where people say, hey, my map drive doesn't work. What's going on? Did you change your password? Did you log into Office? What changed? And those are some of the steps. You got to make sure Internet Explorer is opened once. So at the beginning of the day, you log into Internet Explorer. If it's not automated, your map drive will work until you log off of that Windows section on your workstation. Sometimes there is issues with Windows updates, changing some of these settings you see here under Internet Options or Internet Explorer. Definitely something to review. Again, that's something for my technical team to assist with, along with your own internal IT team. I just want to sort of review this in case you wanted to be able to tackle a map drive issue yourself. Here are some of the steps to do that. So in Internet Explorer, you go up to Internet Options. You have a security tab where you can make all these changes. In your trusted sites, you need to add the trusted site for Internet Explorer to access SharePoint Online. It says, hey, Internet Explorer, I trust this site to be able to have that handshake to let them have access through File Explorer. Again, this could be overly technical, but I wanted you guys to see some of the steps that we do for setup and or troubleshooting of the map drive, which is what most people use SharePoint Online or how they access SharePoint Online. So some of the differences between using a SharePoint site with a web browser and also with a network drive. So the version history, again, incredibly powerful that you see when you go to Internet Explorer. You can use Chrome, you can use Edge, Firefox, Safari. Now, when my team uses it, when my clients use it, if you're having a hard time and you're using Chrome, you do have additional features when you use Internet Explorer. One thing is where you can right-click on document library and see it in File Explorer. So if you don't have it mapped to a specific place, but you want to do a data dump, or you just want to view it or navigate it with File Explorer, you have that option from Internet Explorer. You do not have that option with any other web browser, including Edge. Alerts, again, you'll see pop-ups, new changes, recent history changes. You're able to modify your view, able to see metadata, again, the tagging of specific files, folders, pictures, with custom form or general form saying, hey, this is what this is, and helps categorize your information in there. Flow control, Microsoft Flow, we've touched base on a few times, where you're able to set triggers or yes or no's. hey, I got a new file, what do I do with it? Is it a PDF? Well, if it's a PDF, it needs to go to my accounting team. So anytime that a new PDF goes into your SharePoint site, it automatically sends an email to your accounting team, hey, you have a new file of this, by this person, you need to do this. That's just a basic option. Obviously, you can take that very far with multiple steps, but again, you see that flow control there. Additional security that you're able to see and have, it's live with the SharePoint online through a web browser, able to publish, and you have that rich enterprise search that you don't have with the File Explorer. You do have basic search options, but again, through a web browser session, you have that extra ability. Now, File Explorer is familiar. Everybody knows how to use File Explorer if you've been on a Windows machine. We'll touch base a little bit on Mac a little bit later, but again, Windows product, Windows solution, you know, Office 365 does work with Mac, SharePoint does work with Mac, OneDrive does work with Mac, but you'll have limited features as, in some people's opinion, Windows is more of a business solution, but that will be a debate for the ages. Saving and opening files, a little bit faster with network drive, and sometimes easier to navigate. Now, sharing a file or a folder. You're able to do this from a web browser session and or File Explorer. Sharing it, you have different access of, as you can see, the send link, only people in the company with this link can view or edit. You can also set that to anybody within this group can edit, anybody with this link can edit, anybody with this file can edit, anybody with this file can edit it or forward it. There are all these different options for allowing editing, view only, read only, no forwarding, things of that nature. Now, version history, we've touched base on it, talked about it a little bit in OneDrive. I definitely want to recap it because it's an extremely powerful tool and one of the biggest reasons a lot of people leverage SharePoint, SharePoint Online, OneDrive is for the version history. Instead of having 40 different copies of the same document with minor changes, you have one document with all the revision history behind it. So again, everyone sees one file, but if you need to, you can drill in and see those. Now, as you can see here, we have view history, view your version history. You're able to see all the different updates, and you can even put levels of comments on it saying, hey, Bob made the changes for pre-sales call on 7/25. Or you can say, hey, this is the final draft as of 2018. You can label and detail. Again, this is somewhat of that metadata where you have details of the information so it can be properly sorted, found, and searched for later. So you have different options. You can, the actions available vary with the version and attributes that are set up by the administrator or owner. Choices change based on whether you select the latest file or an earlier version. Version history window for the most recent version of the file includes actions to manage, notify, check out, or create a workflow. And the view of the version history for a previous version of a file shows the option to restore or delete that version. So you have the ability to remove those revision changes, restore from those version changes, open up that specific version. You have many different options with that. So one thing that happens is files get accidentally or on purposely deleted. And the recycle bin is an incredible tool within SharePoint. You can access the recycle bin from the quick launch bar on the left side of the screen. Click the box to the one on the left in the items to files. Select the ones that you want to delete or restore. Select your files, restore them, and it goes back to where they originally belonged. There is a level of recycle bin for users, and then there is a level of recycle bin, a second recycle bin, if you will, that administrators and owners have access to. So when a user says, hey, I deleted a file, and then I can't find it, I looked in the recycling bin, more times than not, you're able to recover that file from a secondary recycle bin. Something I'll touch on a little bit later in this presentation is DLP, or data loss prevention, which is another level of file recovery. So the question is security. Now, this is just a general view that overview of the security options that I took from an Office 365 Microsoft site. So you see baseline protection, sensitive protection, and highly confidential. So you're able to tag information, tag different document libraries, different folders with these different levels. So you have some stuff, obviously, with public team site, everybody gets to see it. You have a project that's private just to a specific team. You have a marketing campaign that's even more sensitive that you don't want to get out. So then you have that DLP policy where you say sensitive SharePoint online team sites. Warns users when sending files outside of the organization. So they are notified. It says, hey, this file, this folder has been tagged as sensitive, which is a really nice addition to it. Now you have highly confidential. Azure Information Protection Plan 1, and there's other levels to there where you had a level of encryption to sharing documents and internal documents. Data loss prevention policy, highly confidential, and it blocks users from sending the files outside of the organization. Now, if you are able to, or you set the permission set to share highly confidential files, you can add on Azure Information Protection Plan, so you actually encrypt those files at a secondary level when you're sharing out very confidential information. So I wanted to recap real quick before I open it up to questions. Central repository, one-stop shop for everybody in the company, split up as departments, different roles. You have an incredible collaboration tool where you're able to share live documents, and also the flexibility, versatility to build it how you want. There's security on the back end where you're able to utilize Office 365's general security, where there is baseline virus and malware scanning over your files within SharePoint Online, which is a great tool. It's not the end all. It doesn't replace your antivirus by any means, but is another level of security of your files and for your users and company. Integrating with other products, reputation. Everybody's heard of SharePoint. Everybody's had different experiences with it, and the options of integrated support, reports. Just to recap, OneDrive, for one, you use that for internal documents for yourself. SharePoint is stuff that you're going to use as collaboration documents for the team. All right, and with great power comes great responsibility. The team that builds it out has to be diligent. They have to know what files they're dealing with, how the users are going to use it, what the users know, and what they need to do to train the users up on that, and how to use SharePoint properly. It's also the responsibility of the users to use this tool properly, not just going off and making their own custom folders all the time if they have the access for it. You don't want to make it so locked down that people can't work, but you also can't make it the Wild West where everybody can do whatever they want. So finding that happy balance is something that does take time. Real quick, I'm going to go into a demo. Maybe we'll have a little bit of time for questions, but I definitely want to show a little bit more. So let me go ahead and do this. All right, as you can see, I have a web browser session open. This is a specific folder I made within a document library for this demo. Now let me go ahead and show us also a file explorer. So as I said before, this is a file explorer session. If I open up a baseline file explorer, we can't really see too much as this is loading up. So I'll just go over the ellipse again. We have our 3 dots. You have more details. You can check out documents. You can build out workflows, get the properties of these documents, download it, build out the flow there, copy the link, share the link. As discussed before, you have many different options with anyone, people inside, people with existing access, or specific people. Then you can also add other settings of allowing editing or making it read-only, and you can put an expiration on those links that you're shipping out. You can copy a link, you can send it from Outlook, you have messages. This is how I always share my files. I usually open up a document, As in test webinar, I'm working it locally or in a web browser, and I usually just hit share and kick it to my team. Say, hey, here's the updated doc. Please read, review, or update this. I don't send emails out. I send it from the document itself. Now you can see I've set a new spreadsheet, updated second time. So let's close that out, and let's go take a look at our version history. So you can see all the changes I made. Again, they are all very close together, but you can see all these version histories. Again, by default, I believe there's 10,000 versions that you're able to do. And when you get to a specific file, you have the options of viewing it or restoring that file. So let's say if we go back to version 1, I'm going to view it. And then you just see some of that information there. You can restore the item. You can delete that item. You can just sort of click on that version to actually see it. So version history. You can click on that specific time. Right now it's opening up the application instead of just using the web browser we saw before. And you see a blank doc because, again, there's nothing in there as this was the first time I opened it up. Real quick, so we see some of the options of version history files, creating new files from here, create new folders, share out documents. You see our options here. As I said before, if you're using Chrome, Safari, you don't have this option for View and File Explorer, which opens up a File Explorer session, which everyone's used to, again, if properly configured, where you can see it as that local document here. So we have different ways of accessing your files, folders, different documents, and again, it comes from these map drives where you have different drive letters, different levels of access depending on what you're using there. I am going to allow everyone, if they would like to ask any questions, I'm going to give that ability. So if anybody wants to jump in and ask any last minute questions, we reviewed just general SharePoint Online, its operation, how people use it, how people set it up, how people design it, how people recover files, how people leverage it to do however they like. Again, I believe we're going to be using this as a file repository in the beginning, but then as you've seen, there are many options here. So I'll open up for the last few minutes. If anybody has any questions, and if I don't hear anything, I will close this out and we will finalize next week with Office 365 Teams training webinar. Again, in this meeting, you have the ability to unmute yourself if you would like to ask any questions. Okay, I would like to thank everyone for their time in joining us today. I hope everybody got a lot out of this, as much as I have. It was a lot of information to cover. It was fairly in-depth, and hopefully it wasn't overwhelming, but I'm looking forward to next week to wrap up this webinar series with Teams. A little pre-information. It's an extremely powerful tool, as with SharePoint does for collaborating on files. This is a replacement for Skype, phone calls, emails. I use it on my phone. I use it all day. It's an incredible tool to share files, share content, have announcements, give remote access to your desktop if you needed. So working on a customer issue for us, we can share our desktop and work internally as team members flawlessly. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining, and I will talk to everyone next week. Thank you.